6 years is a long time to carry a nation's dream on your shoulders. Kai Sotto is 23 years old. He stands 7 feet and 3 inches tall. He played center, and the past tense is already necessary here, for the Koshigaya Alphas of Japan's B.League. The 2025-26 season is done. The Alphas have moved on. The young man from Las Piñas, Saitama, has once again packed up his uncommon life and pointed himself at the horizon. What he's chasing is not merely a contract. It's history. No homegrown Filipino has ever played a regular season game in the NBA. Not one. In a nation of 115 million people, where basketball is not a sport so much as a daily religion, practiced in every barangay from batons to toi-toi on courts where the nets are wire and the backboards are plywood, that blank space in the record books weighs on the collective consciousness in a way that is genuinely difficult to explain to someone who has never felt it. Consider the weight of comparison. When Hakeem Olajuwon left Lagos, Nigeria, in 1980 to play college ball at the University of Houston, he was 17 years old, had played organized basketball for barely 3 years, and spoke almost no English. 5 years later, he was the number 1 pick in the 1984 NBA draft. Eventually, he became arguably the most complete center this sport has ever seen, a man who fused African physical gifts with a technical sophistication that no American program had produced before him. That kind of arc, the arrival from the periphery, the detour through the unconventional, the eventual conquest, is the template that Philippine basketball has been waiting to see claimed by one of its own. The wait has been long. Sotto arrived onto the international stage not as a quiet footnote but as a genuine thunderclap. He was 14 years old and 6'9" when he first pulled on an 8 Neo Blue Eaglets uniform in the UAAP Juniors division. By 15, he was 7'1" and leading the entire league in blocks per game. By 17, he was drawing scholarship offers from multiple NCAA Division I programs. He turned all of them down. In May of 2020, he signed with the NBA G.League Ignite, a developmental program then in its very first year of existence, designed specifically to bridge the gap between high school prodigies and NBA readiness, and suddenly, the world was paying attention. Then came the detours. The pandemic severed his connection to Ignite before it could properly begin. His commitment to the Philippine national team, a choice he has never publicly regretted, created a logistical impossibility that ended the arrangement by mutual agreement. 2 seasons in Adelaide with the 36 heirs followed, genuine professional development, but not the profile builder that NBA draft positioning demands. The 2022 draft came and went without his name being called, despite workouts with Orlando, New York, Sacramento, and Indiana. Then Japan. 3 different clubs across 4 seasons. A torn ACL in January of 2025 that stole an entire year from him. A return to the court in January of 2026 that lasted 10 minutes before a right ankle gave way. And still, the dream has not loosened its grip. Now Sotto is leaving the B.League. He will almost certainly appear at the NBA Summer League this July. He may, under the NCAA's newly expanded eligibility rules for professional players, enroll in an American Division I program and take the collegiate route that he bypassed 6 years ago. He is, at 23, attempting something that requires not just physical talent but a very particular kind of relentless, unreasonable belief in oneself. The question is not whether that belief is admirable. Of course it is. The honest question, the harder one, is whether the belief alone is enough. To understand why Sotto's departure from the B.League carries genuine weight, you first have to understand what the B.League actually is in the broader architecture of international basketball development. This is not a minor domestic circuit. The Japan B.League's top division, the B1, operates at a competitive level comfortably above what Western audiences might casually assume. Former NBA players cycle through it regularly. High-level European professionals use it as a serious earning platform. The athleticism and basketball IQ on display in those gyms on any given Tuesday night would surprise someone who has never sought the game out there. When Sotto joined the Hiroshima Dragonflies near the end of the 2022-23 season, he was not stepping into a soft landing. He was stepping into a legitimate test. His statistical progression across his B.League years charts a slow but genuine upward curve. In 34 games on loan with Yokohama during the 2023-24 season, he averaged 12.6 points and 6.3 rebounds in roughly 20 minutes per night, respectable, but still reflecting a player being managed carefully, his back troubling him quietly behind the scenes. The 2024-25 season with Koshigaya was meant to be the breakthrough campaign. He was averaging 13.8 points and 9.5 rebounds through 26 games, showing real progression in his pick-and-roll reads and his post footwork, when January 5, 2025 arrived and changed everything. A 79-77 loss to the Seahorses Mikawa. He went up, came down at the wrong angle, and his left anterior cruciate ligament gave way. He has described that moment as the darkest day of his basketball life, and I believe him without qualification. ACL tears have a way of arriving without warning and leaving with everything: the rhythm, the confidence, the simple unconscious trust in your own body that you never consciously think about until it's suddenly gone. The rehabilitation took the better part of a year. He rejoined non-contact team practices by August 2025. He attempted his return on January 24, 2026, entering during an Alphas win over the Ibaraki Robots to what the arena gave him warmly, and 10 minutes later, limped off after landing awkwardly on a block attempt, his right ankle sending its own distress signal. The arena went quiet in that particular way arenas go quiet when everyone present sees something and no one wants to say what it looks like. He came back again. That stubbornness, his most visible character trait and almost certainly his most important basketball one, brought him back to the floor, and what he produced in the final weeks of this season is worth sitting with carefully. On February 1, 2026, he surpassed 1,000 career B.League points, a milestone that, small in the grand scheme of a career, was treated as a genuine celebration across the Philippines, which tells you everything about how personally the country has adopted his journey. Then, on March 29, in a double overtime loss against his former Yokohama teammates, he delivered the finest single-game performance of his entire B.League career: 21 points, 19 rebounds, 4 assists. A career high on the boards. Against a team that has studied him, that game planned specifically for him, that knows every tendency he carries into a game. That 19-rebound performance deserves its own moment of examination. Rebounding at that volume is not a function of wingspan alone, though Sotto's wingspan is genuinely exceptional, and the physical advantages it creates are not theoretical. It is a function of reading trajectories before the ball arrives, of refusing to surrender position even when the play has moved away from you, of the obsessive motor that great rebounders operate on instinctively. The last time a player logged 19 or more rebounds in a B.League game and was genuinely on the outer edge of an NBA conversation, the league's landscape looked considerably different. The fact that Sotto produced it late in a grueling season, 6 months removed from ACL surgery, against opponents who know him intimately, that is not a coincidence. That is the accumulation of years of labor finally surfacing through an injury-battered body. So why has the NBA door remained closed? The answer requires surgical precision rather than broad strokes. Kai Sotto is, at his best, not a traditional center in the mold that defined the position through the 1990s and early 2000s. His game is built for the modern era in some dimensions and constrained by an earlier one in others. His shot blocking is authentic. He averaged a block per game in a limited-minute season while still regaining full post-ACL confidence, and he has demonstrated the lateral anticipation to reject shots from the perimeter, which is a non-trivial skill for any big man. His passing has improved quietly and substantially. 3 assists per game in B.League play reflects genuine growth as a decision-maker out of the high post, and the 7-assist performance in March was not a statistical anomaly but evidence of real development. He has touch around the rim. He has patience on the catch and finish that distinguishes him from the raw, lunging young bigs who simply bang inside and hope for the best. What he is not, and this is the assessment that Tab Baldwin, one of the most respected international basketball coaches of the last 2 decades, stated plainly and without cruelty, is a player who can currently function as a true NBA center on either end of the floor. Baldwin's framing was specific and useful. Sotto is a stretch 4, a Kristaps Porzingis type, rather than an Anthony Davis type. He is a skilled big whose offensive upside lives in the mid-range, in the pick and pop, in the high post catch and pass, not in the deep post where NBA centers are supposed to operate against the best interior defenders on the planet. If you put him at the 4, you're asking him to guard athletes like Jaren Jackson Jr., Draymond Green, or any number of mobile, skilled power forwards whose combination of quickness and strength creates nightmarish pick-and-roll coverage situations for bigs whose lateral movement isn't elite. The three-point shooting is the most pressing gap. He connected on just 20% from beyond the arc this season. In 2026, in this league, that number is close to disqualifying for a player asking to function as a floor-spacing big at the power forward position. NBA spacing requirements demand that stretch bigs shoot at minimum 34 to 35% from three to keep defenses honest. Below that threshold, teams simply sag the defender into the paint and eliminate every driving lane for your guards while neutralizing your own threat simultaneously. The Porzingis comparison that Baldwin offered is aspirationally apt, but Porzingis was shooting 37% from three in Latvia as a teenager before he ever stepped on an NBA court. The gap between the comparison and the current evidence is one that several years of focused work could close. But it is unambiguously real today. His free throw percentage, career average around 67 to 68%, is functional but not persuasive for a player at his developmental stage, given that NBA offenses increasingly use the hack strategy against opposing bigs as a deliberate defensive mechanism. And his mobility under pressure, specifically his ability to recover laterally after being put in motion by a ball screen, remains the physical concern that scouts have flagged quietly since 2022 and that no amount of good intentions about development has fully addressed. None of this is a verdict. It is a diagnosis. The clinical kind that a good doctor delivers not to discourage but to specify exactly where the work needs to go. What the NBA Summer League this July actually represents in Sotto-specific circumstances is worth understanding clearly. It has never been, and was never designed to be, a straightforward audition, not at the level Sotto needs. The finest players in the world don't appear in Summer League. Coaching staffs are leaner, schemes are deliberately simplified, and the competition quality spans a wide range from legitimate NBA prospects to players making one final push for a roster spot. But for someone in Sotto's exact position, internationally documented, professionally credentialed, without the domestic college exposure that American scouts use as their primary reference point, Summer League is something specific and valuable. It is a showcase window inside the rooms where decisions get made. It is the environment where casual organizational interest can crystallize into a genuine workout invitation, and a workout invitation can become a training camp non-guarantee, and a non-guarantee can become something real. He appeared in Summer League with the Orlando Magic in 2023. 3 points, 3 rebounds across 2 games, modest by any measure, though the Magic's roster construction at that Summer League didn't create natural opportunities for a high-post, pick-and-pop big to display his actual strengths. Entering the summer of 2026, he arrives with considerably more ammunition, the 1,000-point threshold crossed, the 21.19 rebound game on recent film, the ACL survived and overcome, and 3 additional years of professional seasoning that were simply not yet on the resume when he stood in that Orlando Summer League gym. The NCAA route is the bolder gambit, and its risks cannot be softened through polite framing. The NCAA's eligibility reforms, relatively recent, still settling into the landscape, open the door specifically for professional players who have not signed NBA contracts, who fall within a defined window from their high school graduation date. Sotto qualifies. He graduated from Miami School in Ohio in April of 2021, placing him within the temporal parameters the new rules accommodate. The door is open. Others have already walked through it. James Nagy, a 7-foot Nigerian center who spent 3 full seasons competing at the EuroLeague level with FC Barcelona before anyone in American media had learned to pronounce his surname, enrolled at Baylor University and completely reshaped his professional trajectory and his draft stock. Charles Bediako, a Canadian big with NBA G.League experience, returned to the University of Alabama. The precedents exist. The pathway is established. For Sotto, the calculus cuts in multiple directions simultaneously. A strong season at a high major American program, a Kentucky, a Kansas, a Duke, a Gonzaga, would place him in front of the most influential evaluators in North American basketball on a weekly basis, on national television, in high-stakes games against opponents whose athletic profile would genuinely stress-test his defensive mobility in ways the B.League simply hasn't. It would build the domestic visibility that 4 years of Japanese professional basketball, for all its genuine competitive merit, has been unable to construct for him. The exposure difference between the B.League and Big 12 Conference basketball, from the perspective of an NBA front office in Oklahoma City or Minnesota, is not a small gap. But the sacrifice is enormous and specific. A full NCAA academic season runs November through March at minimum. That window lands directly on top of the FIBA World Cup 2027 Asian qualifier schedule, on top of the Asian Games in Japan, on top of every commitment that Gilas Pilipinas has been constructing toward a genuine international campaign. SBP President Ricky Vargas has handled this tension with public grace and private pain simultaneously. He has been transparent. The Federation supports Sotto's pursuit entirely. His dream is also our dream, Vargas said. There is no bitterness in that sentence, which somehow makes it heavier. What it doesn't say is that the Philippine national team, without Sotto anchoring the frontcourt, averaged 15.5 points and 12.5 rebounds from his position at the 2025 FIBA Asia Cup, and currently has no one on their roster who replicates that production even approximately. Sotto is not merely a role player for Gilas. He is the architectural center of their entire defensive scheme. The reason opposing bigs have to think twice before attacking the paint. The post presence that opens the perimeter for everyone else on the floor. His recurring absences due to injuries, and now this extended career pivot, leave a void that Philippine basketball cannot fill from internal resources. The broader NBA landscape adds one more layer of genuine interest to this moment. The league in 2026 is experiencing what serious observers have been quietly noting for several seasons: a measurable pendulum swing back toward the value of skilled, mobile big men who can protect the rim, push in transition, and survive in pick-and-roll coverage without becoming an automatic liability. After a decade of received wisdom insisting that the traditional center position had been rendered obsolete by pace and space evolution, front offices are once again bidding competitively for 7-footers who can pass, who can shoot off the catch, who can deter penetration at the rim without fouling compulsively. The market for what Kai Sotto theoretically represents has not closed. It has, if anything, reopened slightly. The challenge, and it is real, is closing the gap between the theory and the verified evidence on a nightly basis at the highest level of competition on Earth. 53 years ago, a man named Tab Baldwin was playing basketball in Sudan, completely unaware that a sport being played 6,000 miles away would one day define how the world remembered him. He arrived in the NBA in 1985, at what the official records listed as 22 years old, though nobody with serious knowledge of the situation treated that number with much precision. He blocked 397 shots in his rookie season alone. He became a figure the league had genuinely never seen, unconventional, physically startling, limited in the traditional sense yet irreplaceable in the specific one. He endured 11 NBA seasons because the single thing he did at an elite level was something no organization could manufacture from lesser materials. I raise Tab Baldwin not as a ceiling for Kai Sotto. His ceiling, if the shooting develops, if the mobility holds, if the body survives the demands he continues to place on it, sits considerably higher. I raise Baldwin as a reminder that the NBA has always found room for players who perform one or two things at a genuinely elite level, regardless of how circuitous the road to the building was. The sport has a long tradition of rewarding the improbable if the improbable player is patient enough to wait for the right moment. The question that honest analysis cannot fully resolve is timing. Sotto turns 24 next May. If he commits to a college program and plays one full season, he emerges into the 2027 pre-draft process at nearly 25, old by the standard framework that NBA evaluators apply to prospects, young by the framework that applies to proven international professionals. The scouting community has never fully decided how to handle that particular intersection, and the recent eligibility reforms haven't provided enough case studies yet to establish a clear consensus. James Nagy is only one data point. Charles Bediako is another. The picture is still forming. What Nikola Jokic's career has quietly demonstrated, and it is worth saying plainly rather than letting it sit as implication, is that developmental timelines for international bigs from non-traditional basketball markets do not conform to the compressed windows that American-born prospects are typically measured against. Jokic was taken 41st overall in 2014, played 2 quiet developmental seasons, and by 23 was beginning to show the shape of what would become the most complete offensive game a center has ever produced at the NBA level. The league absorbed that development patiently because the evidence, when it finally crystallized, was undeniable. Nobody talks about how old Nikola Jokic was when he became Nikola Jokic. Sotto's trajectory, surveyed honestly rather than sentimentally, is not a cautionary tale about wasted potential. It is the story of a young man who chose the hardest available route to the hardest available goal in professional basketball, and who is still standing, still posting up, still reading the floor, still competing, after everything the sport has thrown at him. The NBL Fans MVP Award in Adelaide. 4 seasons across 3 Japanese clubs. An ACL endured and overcame in less than a calendar year. A 19-rebound game produced late in a hard season against opponents who knew every move he intended to make. What remains genuinely open are the shooting and the lateral movement questions. They have been open since 2022. The fact that they are still open in 2026 is not a verdict against him, it is a description of where the work is. The NCAA route, if he commits to it, addresses the visibility gap directly and the development gap indirectly, through the rigor of high-stakes collegiate competition. The Summer League, taken alone, addresses neither fully but keeps the conversation alive in the specific rooms where it needs to stay alive for this to work. The Philippines will watch. They always watch. In the barangay courts where the hoops are welded to telephone poles and the games go until it's too dark to see, they will watch. Because Kai Sotto carries something that no one in his country has ever carried this far before: the credible, documented, still-alive possibility of becoming the first. Whether the door finally opens may come down to factors that no amount of analysis can fully predict. The right team. The right summer evening in July when a gym in Las Vegas is 3/4 full and someone with a clipboard is watching at just the right angle. The right spin of a basketball off a backboard in a college arena in November, with 30 scouts in the building and the shot dropping cleanly through the net. He has done everything except stop believing it is possible. That alone keeps the question open.